Hi, this is Zach Condon of Beirut, and we're here today at Major Tom with Pickles. Et pourquoi Pickles? Quelqu'un peut me dire?
Well, it's been a long time now since I've seen you smile.
Usually, I would look for the world music section. I feel like here it's not quite split that way, but that's good actually. That's usually a good sign. Charles Aznavour. Let's start with the French. Let's see what we have here. France Gall. I listen to a lot of Yeye girls and so on. I got really into Serge Gainsbourg and then I was introduced to France Gall, and this has always been a huge thing for me. It can drive you crazy, but it can be really good. So, yeah. I had this album, or something like it anyway, at my apartment in I was still in New York, and I had some French friends over, and they were teasing me, because they said Charles Aznavour is he's too pop for the French audiences. That can't be the measure of a band, whether they're popular or not. I just think that's pointless, really. You know, I hate to say it, I'm not really aware of most of the music from François Hardy. I really only know the classics. Tous les garçons et les filles de mon âge se promènent dans les rues. Because she has this very haunting voice. She sounds surprisingly distant all the time, but in this really interesting way, and I always wonder what that's about, that comes across, and I don't really know what it is. Pas trop à dire, mais... Ouais, on le connaît. Ok, Georges Brassens. I prefer Jane Birkin. Bardot as a singer is interesting, but it's not Birkin. I just found a song. I just put a song of his on a playlist. Let's see if it's on here. He was the one that did the first Syracuse.
J'aimerais tant voir Syracuse, l'île de Pâques et Kérouan.
And that was a really beautiful song. I just played it on the radio, on France Inter. You know, Les 400 coups was the first kind of French film that I was introduced to by my brother at the time, and I remember seeing it and just seeing Paris for the first time, and just, where is that? What is that? What world does that belong to? And I wanted to know everything about it, and I wanted to become it, I wanted to learn it, and yeah, I even did some stupid things. I would steal bread from my local bakery, and I would go to some alleyway and eat it and pretend I was in Les 400 coups, and there's such a beautiful, amazing film. Francis Lay is amazing, actually. He did such amazing music. He's one of my favorites. God, he did so many songs that I love. I loved this movie. Loved it. I was a big fan of Alain Delon. He was another person that, as a teenager, I wished I could be. Yeah, I know. And I was blonde until I was 15, so you know. I've been asked often to do soundtracks, for example, and my problem with that is, like, for example, I had a director come to me and he was showing me all these really amazing folk musics from around Mexico, and he asked me to do the soundtrack to his film, and I was really excited to do it, but then he would give me these scenes and he would say, for this scene we need a serious song, for this scene we need a sad song. And then I would sit down at the piano or whatever, and it was like, how do you just make a sad or happy song? It doesn't make any sense, because for me, music is all about kind of reacting in the moment to the instrument or to whatever you're doing, and so that to me was impossible, and I realized I couldn't do it, so I said no. Part of me wishes I'd tried harder, potentially, but it's a problem I run into a lot. I get asked by someone who's very interesting and their project is really interesting, and there's just no way to kind of force a feeling out. It's like the best I could do is write a lot of music and then hand them a hard drive of ideas, and then they kind of tell me, yeah, that'll work for this scene, that'll work for this scene, but that's the best I can do. So I started with Surfer Girl by the Beach Boys. This record, this is whenever I buy new headphones or a new stereo system, Surfer Girl is the first thing I listen to on it. And this song is everything to me. This was the first song I remember ever hearing and knowing. I used to have this tape cassette of the Beach Boys' greatest hits, and more or less it contained all the songs here and a few more. And Surfer Girl was my, I don't even want to say favorite, because it's more than favorite. It was like, it woke something up in me that I never knew existed. And I used to walk around with this little Fisher-Price tape cassette, and it had a microphone, and I would sing into it all day long. And I sang into it so much that my older brother, I think, actually took the tape out into the yard and smashed it on the ground because he was sick of hearing it. I don't know if I got a new one, I don't remember. So the Beach Boys were my first kind of, even they were my first travel obsession. Seeing them, I wanted to go to California, I wanted to pick up surfing, I wanted to live in Los Angeles or something like that.
If everybody had an ocean across the USA, then everybody'd be surfing like California.
I wanted to become whatever that music was, and I think that that's really stuck with me through the years. And I do think that Brian Wilson, he knew how to write a song, he knew how to write a melody from the heart. That's not something you can learn, it's something I feel like you kind of have or not, and he had it, and it was a gift to the world, and that's what the Beach Boys are to me. So this album is yeah, it's the foundation in every way. Oh yeah, I've heard this guy too. This is the guy that's always kind of taking bird song and kind of sounds from the world and making songs out of it. I have no idea what his story is, but I'm interested. The percussion on my new album, a lot of it is done on modular synthesizer, actually. Modular synth is a weird world because in Berlin you can't throw a rock without hitting someone who's working with modular synthesizers, and everyone's obsessed with it, and it's becoming kind of overdone and tired and all that stuff. But the thing about it that I found really frustrating is most of what I've heard, I feel like it's not getting what I love about modular synth. And to me, the beauty of modular synth is the kind of acoustic timbre of the sound. And so you can get this kind of beautiful electroacoustic sound that feels very organic, but it's not. It's like this new synthesized sound. I mean, it started in like the 50s and 60s when that kind of technology became available. So it's funny because I was learning this technology because I've always been obsessed with these synthesizers. And I'm watching these YouTube videos to kind of learn what it's about and learn how to use it. I couldn't call that music in any way, and I couldn't believe that that's what it was being used for. It seemed like they had these amazing instruments with so much power and sound, and they were just using it for the ugliest possible sounds. And it kind of drove me nuts, and I wanted to with the new album, I wanted to dive into that because I kept thinking to myself, I feel like I can find something for me in that instrument, in that technology or whatever. In the end, I ended up using it to sound kind of like hand drums, hand percussion and that kind of thing. And I really liked that. And I would get that going, and it was like creating your own drum machine from scratch. And I'm big on drum machines from the 70s and early 80s, for example. I really love those. And since I'm not a good drummer, I've used them to kind of back me up in the studio and to write music, and that was always a way to do it. So this way it was like I could create the drum machine from scratch using the same technology they would have done the originals with. And for the new album, it ended up being this perfect combination, and so I brought that up to Norway with me, and that was really interesting to kind of have it. Of all things, I was combining it with kind of pump organ and church organ and these sounds that feel like they're not supposed to go together, but it was just something for me to play with. It was just something for me to kind of experiment with. What would that sound like? What are the possibilities here? And I often use instruments that I think people kind of, they don't take them seriously. Instruments like, ukulélé, accordion. These are instruments that they've become outdated, they've become caricatures, they've become almost shorthand for like joke music, non-serious. But to me, they all have these characters that I find really interesting. The ukulele I find to be a very lonely instrument, a very melancholic, lonely instrument. The accordion I found to be very warm, actually. Very warm and kind of personal and interesting in that way. And so I remember when I was starting to make music, I first started with all synthesizers. I had this big analog Oberheim Matrix 6 keyboard that I had bought off of this kind of grandfather of electronic music. And I was doing all these things, but it wasn't long after that I started hearing film soundtracks. I'd started discovering most of my music through film. That's why I started over here, and I was hoping to kind of run into something that I had known before. Because at the time in America, the only music I was introduced to was like rock music, and more rock music. And it gets so exhausting, and it never really fit my vibe, I guess, for lack of a better term. And then in movies, I started hearing like chansons françaises. I started hearing music from the Balkans, music from Mexico more, because you get that in Santa Fe, but you don't get a lot of it. It was through movies and through movie soundtracks that I started to realize that our view of music in America was so restrictive and so limited that I felt like we were just missing this huge array of sounds, and so I really just started to explore through movies and then through record shops, kind of finding music from all over the world. There's a song on this that's incredible. Yeah, Why Should I Love You? So this song, if I could do it my way, in some ways I would just loop the opening vocal part over and over and over again, because I find it so beautiful, it's so haunting.
Put it out of your mind. Give it time.
Believe it or not, this record kind of started me down the path that I eventually went. So I told you earlier that in America, there was only rock music, and rock music. So when I was a young kid, that was the only option. That's it. So I was trying to at least find interesting rock music that was a little out of the norm. And I would go to record stores, and they would always be putting Joy Division records in my hand. Just, here, kid, take this, take it home, study it. Something good will come of it. And I had all of them, and I really loved all of them. And it was kind of through them that I discovered New Order, and then New Order kind of turned me on to synthesizers, which turned me on to kind of electro-pop music, which turned me into a kind of fan of synthesizers in general. And that eventually led to kind of IDM music, and that even eventually led to hip hop, and then hip hop led to, you know, sampling of all these amazing old soundtracks and jazz musicians. And so this, in a weird way, I don't know how exactly, Joy Division kind of got me moving in a more interesting direction. But if you want to please your local record store shop owner, come and ask for a Joy Division record. They'll send you home with, you know, with a high five or something.
I've been waiting for a guy to come and take me by the hand. 'Cause these sensations make me feel the pleasures of a normal man. These sensations spare me.
Kraftwerk was hugely influential for me. These are influences that I don't even know if anyone could hear anymore, because they were so kind of integral to me learning about songwriting in a lot of ways. And Kraftwerk was one of the first, they were the first ones to show me that repetition was okay. And I feel like I leaned on that very heavily, because the way I make music is I record it, and so I have to loop myself. I have to play piano for 3 minutes straight and then sing over it and then drum over it and then all these kinds of things. And you end up getting into these kind of repetitious things. And as a teenager, I used to think that was really a weakness. And now as an adult, I actually see it as a strength, because any idea that's worth repeating for 3 minutes is a good idea. And songs that you have to switch up and change and you end up just waiting for the chorus anyway, don't bother, you know? Mac DeMarco, there's not a ton of modern music that I'm super into. Mac DeMarco is one of those people. I think music just seems kind of effortless to him, and his sense of melody is really solid. And he's just, you go into Mac world when you listen to this record, and I like that. And this is my favorite of his, actually. I really love the songs that seem to be kind of about his father, and I find that really vulnerable and fascinating. And he's good with vulnerability. Like, so many people, they squash vulnerability and they put on these facades, and that was actually my biggest problem with most rock music, was it was 90% facade and 10% music, as far as I could tell, and that left me feeling quite empty. And so music like this was really refreshing to see, especially nowadays, because it turned again towards the kind of vulnerable, the honest. And yeah, he's joking and he's smiling his way through these records, but the music is serious to me, so yeah. So I chose for the kind of, the more the formation than the foundation. When I was, I want to say 12 or 13, I was a skateboarder. I spent every day at the skate park, and a video came out called Baker 2G, I want to say. I can't remember if that's the skate video. And in it, I can't remember if it was Ali Boulala or someone else, one of my favorite skaters. He had a Pixies song on his part. Doolittle was pop music. When all my friends were going to punk music, to hardcore, emo, all these things like that, I really gravitated towards, again, melody and this kind of pop sensibility. And again, this guy, Francis Black, just has this sense of melody. Like it's like it's like you're born with it, and it's like music just becomes you, and you write a melody that is so memorable. And it's not memorable in the annoying way, it's memorable in the meaningful way. And the Pixies, they're just, it's just coming out of every song. It's just incredible that over the course of like 3-4 albums, from Surfer Rosa to Trompe le Monde, that they couldn't do wrong. It's like, it's just such a lightning streak of music, and it was so creative, and it was so playful, and it was so to me, very genuine, and you could just see that he was just so curious about everything, and he was just constantly experimenting, and really just beautiful results.
Hey, must be a devil between us, or whores in my head, whores at the door.
And so this record is a huge one for me, from the ages of probably 12 to 14, 15, something like that. That would have been when I was listening to a lot of Pixies. It made me want to make music. I've been finding a lot of Latin music lately, and I've kind of gotten into, especially this, I mean, they call it like Andean rock, and it's the kind of psychedelic music from the 60s and 70s, but especially in places like Chile and Uruguay, and to me that makes me so happy when these places can kind of fuse their traditional music with what was going on in the kind of bigger worlds. I'm huge on that stuff. I find it so important. I wish there was more of it, and these days I get really mad because I feel like there's certain types of music that have just steamrolled culture away, and it kind of gets to this point where we're in this like monoculture, where it's like the same dance music everywhere you go, and so I'm really happy when I look at, especially in the 70s, they were such good years for that, because it was almost like before the rest of the world tainted everything with their own styles, and worse than that was the introduction of like the digital keyboard. The Yamaha that could do fake trumpets and fake everything, and I feel like once that was introduced, it was like musicians disappeared, bands disappeared, everyone was doing everything on this kind of very sad keyboard, in my opinion. And it took all the color out of music, just sucked it out. And you can still find good music even done on that, because you can find good music anywhere in any genre. But the 70s were just this kind of special time where the authenticity was still there, because no one had the option to be inauthentic and to take digital sounds and to fix everything after the fact in Pro Tools and stuff like that. It's just something to think about. This guy's really great. He's from Beirut, actually. I really like this record. And in general, what he does, he just did a release with Habibi Funk that's really great as well, that I'm super happy that I got back home recently. Oh yeah, this is a really nice compilation as well. Soul Jazz Records, I think, these guys are heroes. They should be given the keys to the city, so to speak. Everything they did with reggae music, all their kind of like soul jazz compilations from Studio One are amazing pieces of art. It's such a good place to start with like reggae and dub and even dancehall and stuff like that. So that Soul Jazz is like one of my favorite labels of all time, just for their contribution to that alone. But these compilations from Venezuela and places like that are also just incredible. Yeah. This section, you have to understand, this should be a record store of its own. Like the Latin and the Brazilian music has been a huge, huge influence for me. I discovered Brazilian music very early on, actually through Stan Getz. Another interesting thing about the kind of bossa nova movement was it had these really intense, almost like tribal African drums underneath and kind of arranged into these polite sambas and stuff like that. And then they sang so quiet that you have to lean in to hear it. And it really drags your attention in. It's like, who can sing so quietly and command so much attention? And Brazilian music is really amazing at that. And often my favorite records from there, they kind of contrast that quiet restraint on top with these really loud and impressive and heavy movement drum beats. So that came straight from Africa, as far as I can tell. When musics across the world meet, that's when the beauty thing, like that's when the real beauty happens. This is what's great about American music, is it's the combination of like Jewish klezmer and African rhythm and the blues, and then like Northern European folk musics, all meeting to create like country, folk music, the blues, jazz. These are where the really important things happen. It's when these cultures collide. And you know, that was even kind of the influence behind the name Beirut, because it was where East and West meet in this kind of cosmopolitan place. And through all the struggle and strife, you know, there's still this kind of beauty that perseveres. And I find that to be the best thing. And yeah, is there a Turkish music section? Because that would be the next thing to talk about if that was the case. But I don't know. Let's see. Rai music from Algeria. Beautiful stuff. And yes, they had that 90s keyboard that I hate. They did good with it. I'll put that down. Oh yeah, this is, I don't know, you wouldn't really call this Rai music. This is more like modern Algerian, but this is a really amazing record. This guy, I guess he's just an engineer. He wasn't really interested in music. He didn't follow a career in it, but he created these amazing pieces. And Yanis from Habibi Funk, the record label, found him and re-released these songs, which are incredible. Subhana is beautiful. Fairuz is a hero of mine. Her music was a big influence and a big reason that I kind of fell in love with a lot of Arabic music. And it was during this epoch as well, the 60s and the 70s, that their music was kind of meeting Western ideas for the first time in a big way. And I think the result is often incredible. And it's kind of hard for American ears to get used to at first, the kind of different scales and tones. But when you do, there's something really beautiful and haunting underneath that's just kind of, it's just not something you'll get in the West, not the same way. And I chose classics because I'm a big fan of early reggae, and I would even say more of like rock steady and early music like that from Jamaica. And to me, that's the golden period. That's when it all made sense. And that's when you get this beautiful mixture of, you could tell that these guys were listening to a lot of American music like Motown and doo-wop, and they were doing the same like vocal harmonies and the kind of pop melodies that were very, very simple, very digestible, but they were beautiful and they were meaningful. And then they were putting it over this completely new Jamaican invention. Kind of started to drift away from the idea of like this, every musician being an individual in the band, and it became this kind of living organism. And so the music behind, the music underneath a lot of reggae it's like this pulsing organism that the whole band, it's like the bass parts, everything is bouncing off them and reacting to them, and it's like these neat little clockwork parts that all kind of perfectly fit together. And I can only explain it using my hands, because it's not something you can really describe. It's something you have to kind of experience. And that's what the beauty of Jamaican music in general is. It had that. I don't know how they got there and how they figured it out, but once it clicked and became like this kind of stuff, it just changed music forever, because it was kind of the first time that the studio became its own art form. And even on my new record, it's like, you would never listen to it and think, oh, it's like reggae or something. I mean, that would be kind of funny, maybe. But it has all the same elements of this kind of like bouncing beat underneath, and then these kind of organ parts that are just laid on top, and everything is supposed to kind of come together to be this one coherent sound that feels like it organically arrived there, and it's meant to be, and it's meant to be exactly the way it is. And so just the warmth and the vitality and the acoustics of reggae, for example, and rocksteady have been a huge inspiration for me, especially because I'm recording myself nowadays. I'm not really going to studios. So, yeah. Hell yeah.
And we had so many plans. Leap from the sill, see where